Alright, good morning. So, another day, some more hours to be flown on the aircraft. After yesterday's successful flight, with the engine cooling and everything, pretty happy with that. Well, a couple other things that I need to work on. I got the transponder certified last night. It should be all good to go. Had to work through some issues with that. There was a software update for the tail beacon X if you're going to use the GRT as a control head. So went ahead and did that, and then had the guy come out and inspect it. The other thing I'm seeing is initially when I started up and it aligns, the magnetometer is not given the right heading sometimes. So like right now, I need to move probably for it to really realize which way we're pointed, but it's not giving me the right cardinal heading. So I've never done the magnetometer calibration. So first thing I have to do is go through the location validation. So I'm going to take it out to the compass rose, shut down, and go through that process. There's actually some I have to do with it running to see if there's any interference with the electronics. I'll bring on the electrical components that are out on that wing, see if that interferes with it. So there's kind of a process there. Then I'll do some calibration turns on the compass rose, and then we'll check it and see if that's working. And then the next thing I need to do is the calibration for the autopilot, and that needs to be done in the air. So once we get this all set, autopilot obviously works better if it has input on where the right direction to point is. So I need to make sure that the magnetometer is working before I start messing with the autopilot. But today's kind of avionics tuning day. I can try to get everything worked out. Alright, so I just took off, I did my magnetometer calibration, and now I'm going to go out and set the autopilot servo gains. What I like about this engine is it just pulls hard in the climb. You can just set your speed, climbs out really nice, hands off. Doing right now 600 feet a minute at 70% power. Of course, if I want to climb faster, I can certainly point the nose up, give it more power, but 70% power climb keeps my engine temps real good. Just so smooth. I'm really starting to like the engine, especially with the muffler adjustment. That made a big difference as far as the comfortability of the engine. When I had the other muffler on, it was so loud in here, it just felt violent. Right now I've got both doors locked open with Brian Bush's door handles. Get some good airflow in here, and current outside air temperature at 3,500 feet, 77 degrees. Alright guys, I was just talking about the autopilot. I don't know how much of the actual setup I was recording worked because the camera overheated. So I just want to talk about it a little bit. So I went through and set the gain and the dampening for each servo. And the gain is basically as you get a deviation from your course, it's how quickly it's going to respond. So if you lower the gain, it will kind of slowly respond to deviations, very mellow. But in turbulence, you may not be able to keep up and it can cause oscillations. If you go too high a gain, it's going to be like super hyper and trying to correct all the time. So you can kind of set where it's smooth and you're comfortable with it. Then the dampening basically prevents it from overcorrecting and kind of smooths out those oscillations. So you work those two together until you get it so it's holding it fairly well, which it is doing pretty good now. So what I've got going on now is I'm navving. I'm not on a heading, but I'm navving direct to Benton, and I'm actually just going to clip Redding's airspace. So I'm going to go ahead and real quick, I'm going to switch it to heading mode. And then I'm going to just turn the heading a little bit to the left. That changes my course out and around the Redding municipal airspace. So I do have my ADS-B transponder on now, so no more breaking airspace because they know it's me. So the other thing I did that is really cool, and it's amazing that it can do this, is I set an altitude and a vertical speed that I wanted to maintain in that climb. Set my power, it climbed at 400 feet a minute, hit 3,500 feet, and then leveled off. That is even a more advanced feature of an autopilot than what I have on my several $1 million work helicopter that has a fancy autopilot in it. It doesn't do level offs. You have to climb and you have to physically level off the altitude. So this is a more advanced autopilot than what's in our DC-130 helicopter. So it's pretty impressive. I was having a lot of issues with it when I was first playing around with it because I hadn't set anything up. The biggest issue was I hadn't set up the magnetometer. I didn't do the calibration for that. And so now that I've got the magnetometer calibrated, it actually corresponds with what the iPad's seeing through the Stratus ADHARs as far as the headings are correct. That fixed the autopilot drift because I was engaging it before and it would just turn left. So now it's holding course, holding heading, holding altitude. It's working very well. I don't know how much I'll use it. It is, for longer flights, I'm sure I will, You can set up your altitude, heading, nav, whatever, set your power, and then like now I got my hands off, I can operate the camera. It's very stable. I like it. Works good. So that was today's mission, was to get the autopilot all set up. I'm also running the transponder. I had the transponder check done yesterday and got, signed off in the book and everything. So I checked with Redding. They have radar services. I'm squawking appropriately today because the other day there was an issue when I turned it on. I was going to go fly so I could get the ADS-B report, and I got a radio call from an airplane flying over saying ATC was reading an aircraft declaring an emergency. I was squawking 1200. It was on. I told him I was squawking 1200. I turned it off. I turned it back on. I put 1200 back in. He said, first you were squawking 7600. Now you're showing 7500. Which you don't want to squawk either of those. You guys know. Emergency codes. So I turned it off. Well, it turns out there's an update necessary on the avionics tail beacon X for use with the GRT as a control head, which is what I'm doing. And what that update was for is it was just defaulting to show a downed aircraft code, which basically is what was causing that. Or I don't know why I was saying a different squawk code, because that's not really what was happening, but that was what was going on. So we did the update, checked it, that code went away, and now it's performing correctly. I checked with Redding. They were seeing the proper squawk code, VFR 1200, and so everything should be good with that. So the mission was transponder and autopilot today. Tomorrow I'm going to try to tackle the angle of attack. It's not even showing up on here, so I gotta see how you activate that. Well guys, it's taken about 10 hours, but I'm really starting to like this engine. I was really not convinced at first. The muffler seems to help so much quieting it down. I actually got a dB meter. I'll show you guys what I got going on here. I'll put it up here. Now we all bought the same one, so we're all running the same dBs. Right now I've got both doors open. Run it up to fast cruise speed. Now it's actually quieter with it turned upside down too. That's weird. Yeah, so about 102. Not dancing around that 102 mark, and that's at 8,000 RPM. I was seeing the same 102.9 on takeoff, but that was with the doors closed, so there's a lot of variables there, but before I was like 106 or more on the other muffler, so this one's much quieter, and it's just made such a huge difference in the comfort level of how you run the engine. I'm comfortable running the engine all the way up to 9,000 now. Even in cruise, as long as the temperatures are good, it burns a lot of fuel, but you can really get going. So let's take it up there real quick to 9,000. Again, and as I increase power, I have to trim down. So that's why I'd like to put a little bit of nose down in the engine mount. So right now I'm running it at 9,200. It's 2450 on the prop RPM. 106. Burns 7 gallons an hour. You could run it like this, it's not going to over temp. Kind of expensive to run that kind of fuel through it, not compared to Lycoming guys. But yeah, works good. And it's not really a whole lot louder, especially with the Bose headset on. So, I didn't even see a change in the oil temp at all for running like that. So, long story short, is the engine is working really well now, so that it's being cooled properly. Veterinary traffic, Kitfox on the 45 for left traffic 33. There you have it, guys. 2 hours flying. Autopilot's now set. Transponder is working. We'll go home and pull the ADS-B report on the transponder. Got our sound recordings. Got a good flight data log from yesterday. So, yeah, all in all, it's coming along good. We got about 4 or 5 hours in the last couple days. So, going good on the flight testing. Working all the squawks out. All right, guys, I want to cover a couple things real quick. So I increased the size of the oil cooler radiator to a 16 row. I was running a 10 row, and due to the excessive heat here in California during the summer, I just wanted to get a little bit cooler, so I went to 16 row. Seems to have helped out quite a bit. So I'm gonna stick with that, and then I think the best way to do it long term is to go to the thermostat style setup that Brian Dacus is working on. So we'll probably switch to that. That way I can leave the big radiator on through the winter, and the thermostat will control that for me. All right, so today we're gonna set the angle of attack meter on this. So I've got the pitot for that, and it's all you need is the pitot, and then the Grand Rapids or GRT Horizon 10.1 has that built into it, so there's just a menu option. You have to go through and calibrate it or set it up in flight in order for it to work. So we're gonna go up and do that. I made an adjustment to the shock pressure. Hopefully I got it even from left to right so it doesn't sag on one side or the other. It looks like my left wing's a little low at the moment, but we'll see if that improves it. I don't know. I didn't have the camera on for most of that, but I set up the angle of attack indicator, and what I did there basically is you go through the menu and you fly it real close to right about where you're concerned about it stalling, about to stall, just a little bit above that, and you set your pitch limiter, and then once you do that, you go 1.5 times your stall speed, fly that with as steady as you can, so no climbing or descents, hold that airspeed, and then it takes a reading, and then it comes up with its calculations. It gave me some measurements on the offsets that it uses for this airplane. So I took a picture of that. I'm sure it's in there too, but now it's set up. So then I went through and I did some stalls in each flap configuration. Slowest stalls at 39, that's full flaps. Half flaps is about 40, 41. Then I've got those 2 quarter notches, and it goes from 40 to 42 to 43, and then all the way off is about 44. So each notch is giving me about a mile per hour, roughly. So hopefully that other wing will be a little bit slower without the slats, and we'll see an advantage just to having the bigger wing with the lower wing loading and able to get the airspeed down a little bit on the stalls. Then we'll go to the slats, and then this angle of attack indicator is not going to work at all with the slats, so I don't know. It's going to be funny to see that. It's going to be like screaming at you, push forward, push forward. So I changed the frame rate. I don't know if you can see the screen now or not, but there's this little green circle here, and the triangle, I'm not sure what the yellow means. I got to read that again, but I'll show you what it looks like when I start to get into a stall situation. So bring in, let's do half flaps. I'll bring the power off, and that ball, if you can see it, will turn red. First you get a chevron that's red, pointing down. That's your first indication you're approaching. Now the ball's turned red, there's double chevrons. And as you get closer, now it's saying push, push with a big arrow pushing, saying push forward. And then that's pretty much it. From there, I'll go to a stall. So right now I'm half flaps. I expect to stall with my power all the way off, right about 41. Boom, 41. So consistency, I like that. You guys check this out right here. 3.5 gallons an hour, running 7,000, just under 7,000 RPM on the engine, 1,800 on the prop. One notch of flaps in, running about 62 indicated, with a 67 true and a 67 ground speed. Just lumbering along, just kind of slow flying around, low and slow. I'm actually high and slow, but about 3,500. And again, build time in it. I don't want to just drone around, but I'm also playing around with a slow flight right now. So I'm trying to learn the different characteristics of the plane at different power settings, different air speeds. So 3.5 gallons an hour is, man, that's just so cool that I can cruise around. If I want to go out and just fly slow around, put in a notch of flaps.
3755 Lima, downwind.
And do it this way. It doesn't burn hardly any fuel. I mean, 3.5 gallons. I'm only running 36% power right now. Doesn't take much to keep it flying slow. So 60 is about its VX. So right when I get down to Red Bluff here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some glides, some power off glides, and find that VX and VY. Again, those change slightly with your loads, but I want to see what speed, what vertical speed, the lowest vertical speed I can get, what configuration is going to give me that, and then I want to also get the fastest forward momentum for the least amount of vertical speed also. So that will give me my longest glide and my longest duration. So I'll play around with that when I get down here just to the west of Red Bluff, I think that's a good way to spend another half hour or so learning a little bit more about the plane's glide characteristics. So when I get down there, I'll turn the camera back on, talk about some of those numbers. All right, so I just cut the power. I've got no flaps. And I'm going to see what airspeed gives me the best glide as far as the vertical speed. So
check,
55, I'm going 600 feet a minute. So let's slow it up a little bit. 55. See if we can hold it at 53. That gives me about 500, but I think it's going to increase once it settles in. Right back to 600. So let's try a little bit faster. Try to get 60.
Check.
Checking good, dude.
Autopilot disconnect.
Alright, so about 700 feet a minute at 60. I'll have to nose down a little bit more. Notice that with this prop, the faster I go in airspeed, the greater my descent rate becomes because I'm having to windmill that prop. So for example, let's just bring it up so I catch that windmilling prop. And watch my vertical speed now. I'm all the way back to 500 feet a minute. So I'm getting an extra 200 feet a minute loss in vertical speed from the windmilling prop. So that's the disadvantage to this freewheeling unit. Let's try 70. Let's see what 70 does for me. I think I'm going to get about 1,000 feet a minute. Yeah, about 880. It's not too horrible. I'm getting more distance out of it at 70. I got my prop RPM spinning at 650 revolutions a minute. Back to 65. Prop RPM dropped to about 600. The prop RPM jumps in 50 RPM increments, so. All right, I'm gonna recover because I don't want to get below 500 feet here. All right, so go ahead and bring the power back. Bring it 1 notch. Trim it to 1 notch. We'll start with 60. Okay, still the same descent rate, 60. The nose attitude's a little bit different. That's all. You can see a little better. Pretty good glide though. Let's bring it back to 55 and see if we can reduce the vertical speed rate. Yeah, so 55, gonna settle on about 550 vertical speed with 1 notch. Just to check, let's do 2 notches and see if that improves. At 55, I'm gonna have to drop the nose. More up trim. It did not, so back to 1 notch. Yeah, kind of depends. It's kind of right about between 550 and 650 feet per minute on the vertical speed. Not bad. You can definitely pick a spot and work your way into it. I'd say 55 or 60 would be a good engine out glide speed. I'm not too concerned or I'm not going to use 70. That is like diving for the ground with this prop and this setup. So I've got time. Coming down from 3,000 feet, I can pick a field. Got this field out to the left, set up, you know, wherever I want to land in it. Right now the wind's at my back, or actually out my left. I can make this kind of a downwind to base. All thermal out here. All right, between 55 and 60. Seems pretty good. All right, I'm gonna go and recover.
Red Bluff traffic up 30648, downwind to base, runway 15 Red Bluff. We have the Kitfox right at the numbers.
Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'm going to wrap this one up here, and hopefully this video gave you some insight into what goes into setting up the avionics, from the magnetometer to the autopilot, and then the angle of attack indicator, along with just some of the flight testing to, you know, find your stall speeds, your glide speeds, VX, VY, stuff like that. So I'm going to leave you with this clip of going into one of my friend's strips down on the Sacramento River. I was real excited to get to go in here for the first time. He made this strip right about the time I sold my last plane, and so finally got a chance to go in and land it. Great little spot, one I'll definitely be back to. So anyway, enjoy. You guys hit the subscribe button, like button, leave a comment if you have any questions or comments.